Grimsby Manor had a dark history that intrigued many, but only a few dared to explore its secrets. On a foggy autumn evening, Sarah, a young journalist with a passion for the paranormal, arrived at the mansion. She parked her car at the rusty gates, feeling a chill run down her spine. The mansion stood ominously in the distance, its windows like dark, watchful eyes. Sarah pushed open the creaking door of Grimsby Manor. Inside, the air was cold and musty. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but decaying foyer. Dust and cobwebs covered every surface, and old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. Her footsteps echoed through the vast, empty space as she ventured further inside. As Sarah explored the mansion, she felt a sudden chill. Turning around, she saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure disappeared as quickly as it appeared, leaving her heart pounding. Determined to uncover more, she made her way to the library, hoping to find records of the mansion's dark past. In the library, Sarah found rows of dusty old books. As she searched through them, she heard faint whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. She discovered an old diary belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lord Grimsby. The entry spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Sarah's exploration led her to a room filled with mirrors. As she walked through, her reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following her with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught her attention. In it, she saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Sarah reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Sarah discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. She descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old, dusty books scattered on a table. She found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lord Grimsby. As Sarah read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lord Grimsby appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Sarah and screamed, "You should not have come here!" The walls shook and the air filled with a chilling wind. Sarah knew she had to leave immediately. Sarah bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind her. She raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on her. She burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but she could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on her. Back in her apartment, Sarah reviewed the photos and notes she had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the dark history of Grimsby Manor. As she finished, she felt a cold draft and heard Lord Grimsby's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Sarah knew the haunting was far from over.
Emma arrived at Hollow Hill, an old mansion inherited from a distant relative she never knew. Surrounded by a dense forest, the mansion looked abandoned and sinister. The sky was overcast, and a sense of unease washed over her as she approached the entrance. Emma pushed open the heavy wooden door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and musty. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung in the corners. An eerie silence filled the air, broken only by the distant sound of creaking floorboards. Emma stepped into the living room, where old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. An old fireplace dominated one wall, with a large mirror above it. She saw a faint movement in the mirror, but when she turned around, the room was empty. The only sound was the faint ticking of an old clock. In the hallway, Emma found portraits of her ancestors. The eyes of the painted figures seemed to follow her. She felt a chill as she passed by a particularly stern-looking man. Suddenly, she heard a whisper, but when she turned around, no one was there. Emma discovered the mansion's library, filled with ancient books and old furniture. She found an old leather-bound journal on a desk. As she opened it, she read about dark rituals and mysterious deaths that plagued her family. The air grew colder, and she felt an unseen presence watching her. Emma noticed a hidden door behind a bookshelf. She hesitated, but pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down. The air was damp and cold. Holding her flashlight, she descended the stairs, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the silence. The basement was cold and damp, with strange symbols painted on the walls. An altar stood in the center, surrounded by melted candles and old, tattered books. As Emma approached the altar, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The symbols seemed to glow faintly, and she heard distant, echoing whispers. Emma's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand brush against her arm. Panic set in as she fumbled to turn the flashlight back on. When it flickered back on, she saw a ghostly figure standing by the altar, staring at her with hollow eyes. Desperate to escape, Emma turned and ran up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and shadows moving around her. She reached the front door, threw it open, and ran into the stormy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop until she reached her car. Breathing heavily, Emma glanced back at the mansion as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, vowing never to return. On a cold, moonlit night, 4 friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood at the gate of Blackwood Manor. The mansion was notorious for being haunted. They decided to enter, driven by curiosity and a dare. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped inside. The foyer was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. Old portraits stared at them from the walls. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner and a large, broken chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single, haunting note. Everyone froze in fear. Gathering their courage, they climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. They heard faint, eerie whispers, but couldn't tell where they were coming from. They opened one of the doors and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicked, they rushed downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Blackwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again.
In a tranquil forest clearing, the dying light of day casts long shadows over the lush greenery. At the center of the clearing looms a rustic cabin, its weathered facade hinting at secrets hidden within. Inside the cabin, the living room is shrouded in darkness, illuminated only by the feeble glow of a single lamp. Faded wallpaper peels from the walls, and worn-out furniture sits silent and still. Dust dances in the air, stirred by an unseen presence that lingers in the shadows. Outside, the forest clearing is bathed in the ethereal glow of moonlight, casting a haunting pall over the landscape. Ominous clouds gather overhead, and the trees sway in the wind, their branches casting eerie shadows that seem to dance in the darkness. In the kitchen, neglect hangs heavy in the air, with peeling paint and cobwebs clinging to every surface. Moonlight filters through grimy windows, casting twisted shadows that seem to writhe and twist upon the dusty countertops and rusted appliances. Along a winding forest path, darkness reigns supreme, with gnarled trees looming overhead like silent sentinels. The path disappears into the blackness, its destination unknown and foreboding, daring any who venture forth to tread carefully. In the bedroom, the air is musty and thick with the scent of decay. A creaky bed sits silent and still, its threadbare curtains fluttering in the breeze. Moonlight filters through cracks in the walls, casting eerie patterns that dance upon the worn floorboards like specters in the night. As night falls, a raging storm descends upon the forest clearing, with lightning illuminating the sky in blinding flashes and thunder rumbling like the roar of a distant beast. The wind howls through the trees, whipping up leaves and debris in a frenzied dance of chaos and despair. Deep within the bowels of the cabin lies the basement, a dark and foreboding chamber filled with crumbling walls and rusty pipes. Moonlight filters weakly through a small window, casting a feeble glow over the mold-covered floor, illuminating the dank and musty air with its eerie light. As dawn breaks, the forest clearing is bathed in the soft light of a new day, with birds chirping and dew glistening on the leaves like scattered diamonds. The storm has passed, leaving behind a sense of calm and renewal that belies the horrors that lurk within the haunted cabin. In the cabin's living room, morning sunlight streams through the windows, banishing the shadows and illuminating the space with its warm embrace. Dust motes dance lazily in the air, and the oppressive atmosphere of the night has lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and serenity that signals the dawn of a new day. On a crisp autumn day, a group of friends arrives at a remote cabin nestled deep within the Whispering Woods. The leaves crunch beneath their feet as they unload their belongings from the car, eager for a weekend of hiking and relaxation. But as they glance into the dense forest surrounding the cabin, a sense of unease washes over them, as if the trees themselves are whispering secrets they dare not share. The friends set out on a hike through the Whispering Woods, following a narrow trail that winds through the dense foliage. The air is cool and fragrant, and the only sound is the gentle rustle of leaves overhead. But as they venture deeper into the forest, the whispers grow louder, like a chorus of voices urging them to turn back. As they hike, the friends stumble upon an abandoned cabin hidden deep in the woods. The windows are shattered, and the door hangs off its hinges. Intrigued, they decide to investigate, their curiosity outweighing their sense of caution. But as they step inside, they're greeted by an eerie silence that hangs heavy in the air. Inside the cabin, the friends find strange symbols scrawled on the walls and mysterious artifacts scattered about. A sense of unease washes over them as they realize they've stumbled upon something dark and sinister. They exchange nervous whispers, their voices echoing in the empty space. As night falls, the friends gather around a campfire outside the cabin, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. But as they talk and laugh, they become aware of a strange sound, a soft whispering that seems to emanate from the very air around them. Their laughter fades, replaced by a growing sense of unease. That night, the friends are plagued by haunting dreams, visions of shadowy figures lurking in the darkness, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. They toss and turn in their sleep, unable to escape the grip of fear that holds them tight. When they wake, they find themselves drenched in sweat, their hearts pounding in their chests. As the whispers grow louder and more insistent, the friends begin to unravel, their minds tormented by the malevolent voices that seem to follow them wherever they go. They argue and accuse one another, their once strong bonds fraying under the weight of paranoia and fear. But as they spiral further into madness, they realize they must confront the darkness that lurks within the Whispering Woods if they have any hope of escaping its grasp. Armed with determination, the friends set out into the forest, their hearts pounding in their chests as they confront the source of the whispers that have tormented them for so long. With each step, the voices grow louder, until they're surrounded by a cacophony of sound that threatens to drive them mad. But as they reach the heart of the woods, they discover the truth. The whispers are not coming from some malevolent force, but from the very trees themselves, their branches swaying in the breeze like fingers beckoning them closer. With a newfound sense of understanding, the friends make their way out of the forest, their minds clearer than they've been in days. As they emerge into the light of day, they feel a weight lifted from their shoulders, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the Whispering Woods will always hold a certain mystique, they know they'll never again be haunted by the whispers that once tormented them.
Anna and her husband, Tom, arrive at Blackwood Manor, an old mansion they inherited from Anna's late uncle. The house is grand, but has been abandoned for years. As they explore, Anna finds a dusty old journal in the study. Curious, she decides to read it later. That night, Anna wakes up to strange noises, whispers, and faint footsteps. She dismisses it as the house settling. When she looks out the window, she sees a flickering light in the garden. She turns to wake Tom, but the light disappears when she looks back. The next day, Anna reads the journal. It belonged to her uncle, who wrote about a mysterious figure he saw in the house. The entries become more frantic, describing how the figure tormented him. His last entry warns about a hidden room in the attic. Determined to find the hidden room, Anna and Tom search the attic. They discover a concealed door behind some old furniture. Inside, they find an old nursery filled with dusty toys and a large, cracked mirror. In the mirror, Anna briefly sees a shadowy figure standing behind them. That night, the haunting intensifies. Anna sees the shadowy figure in the mirror again, now clearer and more menacing. The air grows cold, and she hears a chilling whisper saying, Find my child. Terrified, she realizes the ghost is trying to communicate. Anna tells Tom about her experiences. They decide to seek help from a local historian. The historian tells them about the tragic history of Blackwood Manor, involving a woman named Eleanor, who lost her child and died in despair. Her spirit is believed to haunt the house. Following the historian's advice, Anna and Tom search the garden and find a small, unmarked grave hidden among the overgrowth. They realize it's the grave of Eleanor's child. They decide to perform a simple ritual to give the child a proper burial. Anna and Tom perform the ritual, laying flowers and saying a prayer. As they finish, they see Eleanor's ghost appear, looking peaceful. She silently thanks them before fading away. The air feels warmer and the oppressive atmosphere lifts. With the ritual complete, the haunting stops. The house feels lighter and more welcoming. Anna and Tom decide to stay, feeling a deep connection to the house and its history. They keep the journal as a reminder of the past they helped lay to rest. Months later, Anna and Tom enjoy their peaceful home. They often think about Eleanor and the child and are grateful for the experience that brought them closer together and helped them appreciate their new home. The memories of the past live on, but in a peaceful way. The abandoned Ravenswood Asylum stood on a hill, shrouded in fog and mystery. Jessica, a paranormal investigator, arrived at dusk, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. She parked her car and gazed at the looming building, its windows dark and empty like soulless eyes. Jessica pushed open the heavy front door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the asylum was dark and cold. She turned on her flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. The walls were lined with peeling paint and graffiti, and the floor was littered with debris. Her footsteps echoed eerily as she ventured deeper. As Jessica explored the main hallway, she felt a sudden chill. She turned to see a ghostly figure of a nurse standing at the end of the corridor. The nurse's face was pale and expressionless, and she slowly raised a finger to her lips as if to shush Jessica. Then she vanished into thin air. Jessica entered a room that appeared to have been a common area. Old, broken furniture was scattered around, and the walls were covered with faded, eerie drawings. As she examined the drawings, she heard faint whispers. She turned to see shadowy figures moving along the walls, their eyes glowing faintly. In the corner of the room, Jessica found an old journal. She opened it and read about the asylum's dark history, experiments on patients, mysterious deaths, and cover-ups. The journal mentioned a hidden basement where the worst atrocities occurred. Determined, Jessica set out to find it. Jessica found a hidden door behind a bookshelf, leading to a staircase that descended into darkness. She took a deep breath and started down the steps. The basement was cold and damp, with rusty equipment and old stained medical tools scattered around. The air was thick with the smell of decay. In the basement, Jessica saw the spirits of the patients. They were trapped, reliving their torment. A particularly sorrowful spirit, a young woman named Alice, revealed that the asylum's director had performed cruel experiments on them. The spirits begged Jessica to help them find peace. Jessica found a hidden chamber where the director's spirit lingered, still obsessed with his experiments. She confronted him, demanding he release the tortured souls. The director's spirit raged, but the power of the trapped souls combined with Jessica's determination forced him to vanish into the ether. With the director's spirit gone, the asylum began to crumble. Jessica hurried out, watching from a safe distance as the building collapsed. The spirits were finally free, and a sense of peace settled over the area. As the sun rose, the fog lifted, revealing a bright new day. 4 friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lily, stood outside an old, abandoned house on a dare. The house was infamous in their town for being haunted, but they decided to spend the night there to prove their bravery. They pushed open the rusty gate and walked to the front door, which creaked loudly as they opened it. Inside, the house was dark and musty, with broken furniture and cobwebs everywhere. In the living room, they saw an old, dusty couch and a broken chandelier. Suddenly, a cold breeze blew through the room, making them shiver. They heard a faint whisper, but couldn't tell where it came from. They decided to explore upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked with every step. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. they heard a strange scratching sound coming from one of the rooms. They opened the door to the room and saw a rocking chair moving on its own. The temperature dropped suddenly, and they saw the faint outline of a ghostly figure in the corner. The figure whispered, "Leave this place." Panicking, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even colder and darker. They found strange symbols on the walls and old, dusty furniture. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure again, now clearer and more menacing. The ghost raised its hand, and the friends felt an icy wind pushing them towards the stairs. Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house, the door slamming shut behind them. They didn't stop running until they were far from the house. They vowed never to return and to never speak of what they had seen.
A car winds its way down a narrow road, flanked on both sides by dense forest. Inside, a group of friends chats excitedly, their anticipation palpable as they approach their destination, a secluded cabin deep in the heart of the Whispering Woods. As they round a bend in the road, the cabin comes into view, its weathered facade blending seamlessly with the surrounding trees. The friends step out of the car and approach the cabin, their footsteps muffled by the thick layer of pine needles covering the ground. The air is cool and crisp, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. They unlock the door and step inside, their excitement mounting as they take in their surroundings. The cozy fireplace, the rustic furniture, the promise of a weekend filled with laughter and adventure. The next day, the friends set out on a hike through the Whispering Woods, eager to explore their surroundings. They follow a narrow trail that winds its way through the dense forest, the canopy overhead casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. As they walk, they hear the faint sound of whispering in the distance, but they dismiss it as nothing more than the wind rustling through the trees. As they hike deeper into the woods, the friends stumble upon an abandoned clearing, a forgotten relic of a bygone era. The grass is overgrown, and the remains of a crumbling stone structure lie scattered among the trees. A sense of unease washes over them as they enter the clearing, the whispering growing louder with each step they take. As they explore the clearing, the friends are overcome by a sense of foreboding, the whispering growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. They exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding in their chests as they try to locate the source of the strange noises. But the forest remains silent, its secrets hidden beneath a shroud of darkness. Suddenly, one of the friends disappears without a trace, leaving the others panicked and confused. They call out into the darkness, their voices echoing through the trees, but there's no response. Frantic, they search the clearing, their fear mounting with each passing moment. But the forest remains silent, as if swallowing their cries for help. As night falls, the friends begin to unravel, their minds tormented by the whispers that fill the air. They argue and accuse one another, their once strong bonds strained to the breaking point. But as they spiral further into madness, they realize they must confront the darkness that lurks within the Whispering Woods if they have any hope of escaping its grasp. Armed with determination, the remaining friends set out to confront the evil that haunts the Whispering Woods once and for all. They gather in the clearing, their hearts pounding in their chests as they prepare to face their greatest fears. With a final glance at one another, they steel themselves for the battle ahead. As dawn breaks, the remaining friends emerge from the Whispering Woods, battered and bruised but alive. They exchange weary smiles, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the scars of their ordeal will never fully heal, they take solace in the knowledge that they've conquered the darkness that once threatened to consume them. Blackwood Manor had long been abandoned and forgotten, standing as a dark silhouette against the evening sky. On a chilly, misty night, Lily, a young and curious journalist, arrived to uncover the truth behind the rumors of hauntings. She parked her car at the rusted gates, feeling a mixture of excitement and dread. The mansion's windows stared back at her like soulless eyes. Lily pushed open the creaking door of Blackwood Manor. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but dilapidated foyer. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and old furniture lay covered in white sheets. Her footsteps echoed in the vast, empty space as she ventured further inside. As Lily explored the mansion, she felt an icy breeze pass by her. Turning around, she saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure disappeared as quickly as it appeared, leaving her heart pounding. Determined to uncover more, she made her way to the library, hoping to find records of the mansion's history. In the library, Lily found rows of dusty old books. As she searched through them, she heard whispers and the sound of pages turning by themselves. She discovered an old journal belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lady Blackwood. The entry spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Lily's exploration led her to a room filled with mirrors. As she walked through, her reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following her with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught her attention. In it, she saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Lily reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Lily discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. She descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old dusty books scattered on a table. She found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lady Blackwood. As Lily read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lady Blackwood appeared, her face twisted with rage. She pointed at Lily and screamed, "You should not have come here!" The walls shook and the air filled with a chilling wind. Lily knew she had to leave immediately. Lily bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind her. She raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on her. She burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but she could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on her. Back in her apartment, Lily reviewed the photos and notes she had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the dark history of Blackwood Manor. As she finished, she felt a cold draft and heard Lady Blackwood's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Lily knew the haunting was far from over.
On a foggy evening, 4 friends, Jess, Ryan, Maya, and Ethan, arrive at Blackwood Manor, an imposing mansion nestled deep within the woods. The moon casts an eerie glow over the ivy-covered walls as they approach, their footsteps muffled by the dense fog. Jess shivers, feeling a chill run down her spine. With a creak, the massive oak doors of Blackwood Manor swing open, revealing a dimly lit entryway. Cobwebs cling to the high ceiling, and dust dances in the beams of their flashlights as they cautiously step inside. The air is heavy with the scent of age and decay, sending shivers down their spines. Inside the mansion, they navigate a maze of hallways, each corridor seemingly darker and more foreboding than the last. Paint peels from the walls, and the floorboards groan beneath their weight. Strange symbols etched into the wood send shivers down their spines, and they quicken their pace, eager to uncover the mansion's secrets. As they explore, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to emanate from the very walls of the mansion. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an unsettling chorus. The friends exchange uneasy glances, their senses on high alert as they try to decipher the ghostly messages. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them, translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. The ethereal beings float through the air, their movements graceful yet unsettling. The friends watch in horror as the spirits draw closer, their presence filling the mansion with a chilling aura. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends turn and flee from the mansion, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark corridors, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly apparitions follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends burst through the door of the mansion, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the ground outside, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. The moon casts a soft glow over the forest, a comforting reminder that they have escaped the clutches of Blackwood Manor. In a secluded village surrounded by dense forests, there was a legend of the Whispering Woods, where the trees whispered secrets and shadows danced in the moonlight. A group of friends, led by Sarah, ventured into the Whispering Woods, drawn by the allure of the mysterious tales. They entered with trepidation, their hearts pounding with excitement and fear. As they delved deeper into the woods, the air grew thick with an unnatural chill, and the trees seemed to whisper secrets in a language unknown. Sarah led the group onward, her determination masking her growing unease. They stumbled upon a small clearing bathed in an ethereal glow, where ghostly figures danced in the moonlight, their laughter echoing eerily through the woods. Sarah hesitated, sensing danger lurking in the shadows. As they tried to leave, the forest seemed to shift around them, trapping them in a nightmarish maze of twisting paths and tangled roots. Panic set in as they realized they were lost in the whispering woods. In the heart of the forest, they encountered an ancient guardian, a towering figure cloaked in darkness, its eyes gleaming with malevolence. Sarah knew they had trespassed into a realm beyond their understanding. With courage born of desperation, Sarah and her friends made a final dash for freedom, racing through the twisting paths as the guardian's laughter echoed behind them. At last, they emerged from the whispering woods, shaken but alive. Jonathan, a middle-aged man with a strained relationship with his family, receives a letter informing him of an inheritance from his late uncle. The inheritance includes a remote mansion in the countryside. Curious and financially strained, Jonathan decides to visit the mansion with his wife, Laura, and their teenage daughter, Megan. Laura looks worried. "Are you sure about this? We don't even know much about your uncle." Jonathan nods. "We need a fresh start, and maybe this place can offer that." Megan, always the adventurous one, says excitedly, "It'll be like an adventure." The family arrives at the mansion late in the afternoon. The mansion stands tall and imposing, surrounded by a dense forest. The air is thick with the scent of decay, and the atmosphere is eerily quiet. Megan shivers. This place feels off. Jonathan, trying to be positive, says, "It's just old. Let's see what's inside." Laura clutches Megan's hand. "Stay close, honey." Inside, the mansion is filled with dust and cobwebs. The furniture is covered with white sheets, and the air is musty. As they explore, Megan finds an old, ornate mirror in one of the rooms. The mirror's surface is strangely clean compared to the rest of the house. "Look at this mirror," Megan calls out. Laura touches the frame. "It's beautiful, but out of place here." Jonathan frowns. "Why is it so clean?" That night, the family tries to settle in. Jonathan and Laura fall asleep quickly, but Megan struggles. Around midnight, she hears faint whispers and feels a cold breeze. The mirror in her room begins to fog up, revealing words written from the inside. "Help us," it reads. Terrified, Megan runs to her parents' room. "Mom, Dad, there's something in the mirror." Jonathan, groggy, tries to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, Megan. Go back to sleep." The next day, the family visits the local library to learn more about the mansion. They discover that it was owned by Jonathan's uncle, who was a reclusive and eccentric man interested in the occult. Laura reads from an old newspaper. Local recluse found dead under mysterious circumstances. Mansion believed to be haunted. Jonathan sighs. "This explains a lot. We need to be careful." Megan, still shaken, adds, "What if the spirits are still here?" Back at the mansion, Jonathan discovers a hidden door in the basement. Inside, they find an old study filled with books on the occult, strange artifacts, and a large, locked chest. Laura examines a book. "He was really into dark stuff. This can't be good." Jonathan tries to open the chest, but fails. "We need to find the key. There might be answers inside." Megan points to a strange symbol on the wall. "I've seen this symbol before, in my room." That night, the hauntings escalate. Objects move on their own, and ghostly apparitions appear. Megan is dragged out of bed by an unseen force, and Laura sees a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway watching them. "We have to leave now," Laura screams, but the doors are locked and won't open. Jonathan grabs an old book from the study. "This book has instructions to banish the spirits. We need to perform the ritual." Desperate, the family gathers in the basement to perform the ritual. They light candles and arrange the symbols in a circle. Jonathan reads the incantation aloud, while Laura and Megan hold hands, trembling. As the ritual progresses, the house shakes, and the spirits grow more agitated. A blinding light fills the room, and the spirits are drawn into the circle, screaming. "Keep going, Jonathan!" Laura yells over the noise. With a final shout, Jonathan completes the incantation and the spirits vanish. The house falls silent. The next morning, the mansion feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone, and sunlight streams through the windows. The family packs up their belongings, relieved that the ordeal is over. "We should tell someone about this place," Laura says, looking back at the mansion. Jonathan nods. "Let's make sure no one else has to go through this." They drive away, leaving the mansion behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Megan finds the old mirror in her room, even though they left it at the mansion. Her heart races as she sees words slowly appear on the surface. "We are not done," it reads. Megan turns to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness.
The old house stood at the end of the lonely street, its windows shattered and its wooden walls weathered by time. Sarah had heard stories about the house since she was a child. It was said to be haunted, a place where shadows whispered secrets and the air was thick with dread. Determined to prove it was all just a myth, she decided to spend the night there. As Sarah pushed open the creaking door, the musty smell of decay hit her. The interior was dark, with only the faintest light filtering through the grimy windows. She stepped inside, the floorboards groaning under her weight. Every corner seemed to be alive with whispers, just out of reach. Sarah moved cautiously into the living room. The furniture was covered in dust and cobwebs draped from the ceiling. An old grandfather clock stood against the wall, its hands frozen at midnight. As she looked around, she heard a faint whispering, like someone speaking from the shadows. On the wall hung a portrait of a stern-looking man. His eyes seemed to follow Sarah as she moved. She felt a chill run down her spine. The whispers grew louder, and for a moment, she thought she saw the man's eyes blink. She stepped back in fear, her heart racing. Sarah found herself drawn to a door partially hidden behind a tattered curtain. She hesitated before pulling it open, revealing a set of stairs leading down into the darkness. The whispers were clearer now, urging her to descend. With trembling hands, she held her flashlight and began her descent. The basement was cold and damp, the walls lined with old shelves holding dusty jars and forgotten relics. The whispers were louder here, almost tangible. Sarah felt a presence behind her and spun around but saw nothing. Suddenly, an old radio crackled to life, playing a haunting lullaby. Sarah's flashlight flickered and died. In the darkness, she felt something brush against her arm. She backed away, stumbling over an old trunk. The whispers were deafening now. She managed to open the trunk, revealing an old diary. The pages told the story of a man who had lost his family and descended into madness, cursing the house and anyone who entered. Realizing the danger, Sarah grabbed the diary and rushed up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, the whispers turning into screams. Doors slammed shut around her, and the air grew colder. She reached the front door and burst out into the night, the whispers fading behind her. Outside, Sarah collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. She looked back at the house, now silent and still. She knew she could never explain what happened, but she had the diary as proof. As she walked away, she heard one last whisper in the wind, promising that the shadows would always be watching.
Lena, Mark, and Sarah arrived at Ravenwood House, an old, decrepit mansion that had been abandoned for years. The house stood at the end of a lonely road, surrounded by thick, twisted trees. They were there to investigate the rumored hauntings for their paranormal blog. "This place is giving me chills already," Sarah whispered, hugging her coat tighter. "Perfect for our blog," Mark replied, setting up his camera. "Let's capture some real scares." Lena pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. "Let's go in and set up. The sooner we start, the sooner we can leave." Inside, the house was dark and filled with the smell of mold and dust. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and old furniture was scattered about. As they explored, they found old portraits on the walls, books with yellowed pages, and broken trinkets. "Look at this," Mark said, picking up a dusty photograph of a family. "They must have lived here a long time ago." Lena shivered. "It feels like they're still watching us." Sarah glanced nervously at the dark corners. "Let's just get the footage and get out of here." Lena found an old leather-bound journal on a table covered in dust. She opened it carefully and started reading aloud. The journal belonged to the house's previous owner, detailing strange occurrences and sightings of a ghostly figure. "Listen to this," Lena said, her voice trembling. "The owner saw a woman in white every night standing by the window." Sarah hugged herself. "That's creepy. What happened to them?" Lena turned the pages. "It just stops. No explanation." Mark filmed Lena reading. "This is exactly what we need. Keep going." As they continued exploring, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped. They saw a figure in a white dress standing at the end of the hallway. The figure's face was obscured by shadows, but they could feel its eyes on them. "Do you see that?" Mark whispered, his camera shaking. "Yes," Sarah replied, her voice barely audible. "Let's get out of here." The figure started moving towards them. They ran, slamming a door behind them. "We have to leave," Sarah insisted, her eyes wide with fear. "Not yet," Lena said, determined. "We need to find out what's really happening here." Lena found another entry in the journal that described a ritual to banish the spirit. They needed to gather candles, salt, and a mirror. The tension was palpable as they worked quickly, knowing the spirit could return any moment. "Are you sure this will work?" Mark asked, placing candles around the room. "It has to," Lena replied, pouring salt in a circle. "We don't have any other choice." Sarah held the mirror, her hands shaking. "Just hurry." As they began the ritual, the spirit returned, more menacing than before. It howled and thrashed against the barrier created by the salt circle. Lena chanted the incantation from the journal, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Keep it away from us!" Sarah shouted, clutching the mirror tightly. "We're almost there!" Lena yelled, her focus unbroken. The spirit's form began to waver and dissolve as the ritual reached its climax. With a final, desperate scream, it vanished into thin air. They collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by an eerie calm. "We did it," Lena said, her voice barely a whisper. "Let's get out of here," Sarah urged, her eyes still wide with fear. They gathered their equipment and left the house, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. As they walked away, they felt a sense of triumph and relief. "Let's never do this again," Mark said, managing a weak smile. As they walked away from the house, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the landscape. The house behind them was now just a distant memory, a place they would never forget but never return to. "Let's make a pact," Lena said, stopping to look at her friends. "We never speak of this again." "Agreed," Mark and Sarah said in unison. They walked on, leaving the haunted Ravenwood house behind, grateful to have survived their night of terror.
In the quiet countryside, shrouded in mist, stands the imposing Blackwood Manor, a mansion long abandoned and rumored to be haunted. A group of thrill-seekers, Alex, Lily, and James, arrive at the manor one moonlit night, drawn by its dark history. As they approach the manor, they are greeted by a heavy iron gate, its rusty bars twisted and warped with age. The gate creaks open ominously, as if welcoming them into its dark embrace. The group hesitates, but their curiosity pushes them forward. Inside the manor, the air is thick with dust and the scent of decay. The group explores room after room, their footsteps echoing off the empty walls. Shadows dance in the flickering candlelight, and strange whispers seem to follow them wherever they go. As they delve deeper into the manor, they uncover signs of its dark past. Forgotten diaries filled with tales of madness and despair, hidden passages leading to secret chambers, and portraits of long-dead residents whose eyes seem to follow their every move. As night falls, the manor comes alive with ghostly apparitions and sinister whispers. The group is plagued by visions of the past, echoes of tragedy and despair that seem to seep from the very walls themselves, threatening to consume them. In a desperate bid to escape the manor's grasp, the group races through its labyrinthine halls, their hearts pounding and their breath coming in ragged gasps. But the manor seems to have other plans, its corridors shifting and changing before their eyes, trapping them in a nightmarish maze. Cornered in the manor's dark heart, the group confronts the malevolent force that has plagued them since their arrival. With a final desperate act of defiance, they banish the entity back into the shadows from whence it came, freeing themselves from its grasp and escaping into the night. In the heart of the dense forest, an abandoned cottage stands in solemn silence. Its windows are shattered, and the roof sags under the weight of time. Vines creep up the decaying walls, enveloping the cottage in a sinister embrace. As dusk descends, an eerie mist blankets the surroundings, setting the stage for dark secrets to unfold. Within the dilapidated cottage, the living room is a haunting scene of neglect. Broken furniture lies scattered amidst cobwebs that cling to every corner. Faded wallpaper peels from the walls, revealing glimpses of a forgotten past. The air is heavy with a musty odor, as if time itself has stagnated within these walls. A single flickering candle struggles to illuminate the darkness, casting long shadows that seem to dance with unseen entities. In the neglected kitchen, chaos reigns supreme. Dirty dishes lie abandoned on the countertops, forgotten remnants of a life long gone. A thick layer of dust blankets every surface, undisturbed by human hands. The sink drips ominously, each drop echoing through the silence like a foreboding drumbeat. The only sound is the occasional creak of the floorboards, as if the very foundations of the cottage groan with the weight of its secrets. Within the gloom of the bedroom, tattered curtains sway in the whispering wind, casting eerie silhouettes upon the walls. An old creaky bed stands sentinel against one wall, its mattress sagging with the weight of forgotten dreams. Moonlight filters through a cracked window, illuminating the peeling wallpaper with an otherworldly glow. The air is heavy with a sense of unease, as if the very room itself holds its breath, waiting for something sinister to unfold. Outside in the neglected backyard, nature reclaims its territory with a vengeance. Weeds choke the once manicured lawn, obscuring the path to an old well that sits at its center. Its stone walls are weathered and crumbling, a silent testament to the passage of time. Shadows dance across the overgrown grass, their movements mysterious and unsettling. The oppressive silence is broken only by the rustling of leaves in the wind, as if the very forest itself whispers secrets to those who dare to listen. In the dim light of the basement, rusted chains hang ominously from the ceiling, their purpose long forgotten. Cobwebs cling to the damp walls, weaving intricate patterns that seem to pulsate with a sinister energy. Strange symbols are etched into the stone floor, their meaning lost to time. The air is heavy with a sense of malevolence, as if the very walls themselves are alive with dark intent. With the arrival of dawn, a faint light washes over the decrepit front porch, casting long shadows that seem to stretch and twist with the shifting light. The wooden boards groan underfoot, protesting the weight of each step. The wind whispers through the cracks in the walls, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. The surrounding forest looms ominously, its dense canopy concealing secrets that refuse to be uncovered. In the dying light of evening stands the abandoned mill, a relic of a forgotten era. Its weathered wooden walls bear the scars of time, with broken windows and a sagging roof threatening to collapse. Vines crawl up the sides like tendrils of decay, while the surrounding trees cast long, eerie shadows that seem to reach out and beckon. In front of the mill lies a murky pond, its still waters reflecting the ghostly glow of the moon above. Reeds and cattails line the shore, rustling softly in the breeze. The air is thick with the sound of croaking frogs, their calls echoing through the darkness like a haunting melody. At the side of the mill, the giant wheel creaks and groans as it turns slowly in the moonlight. Moss and algae cling to its wooden surface, evidence of years spent submerged in the stagnant water below. The sound of rushing water fills the air, a constant reminder of the mill's former glory days. Inside the mill, the air is thick with dust and cobwebs, the silence broken only by the occasional creak of rusty machinery. Shadows dance in the dim light, casting strange shapes upon the walls and adding to the sense of unease that permeates the space. The floorboards creak underfoot as if protesting the intrusion of unwelcome visitors. Descending into the depths of the mill, the air grows colder and the darkness deeper. Rusted pipes line the narrow corridors, their surfaces slick with condensation. Crumbling walls threaten to collapse at any moment, while the sound of dripping water echoes through the darkness like a mournful lament. In the dusty confines of the mill's attic, old crates and forgotten tools litter the floor, their surfaces coated in a thick layer of dust. Cobwebs hang from the rafters like ghostly curtains, their delicate threads shimmering in the faint glow of moonlight that filters through a cracked window. The air is heavy with the weight of forgotten memories, a testament to the mill's long-abandoned past. In the dead of night, the mill exterior takes on a sinister appearance, its weathered walls looming like silent sentinels against the backdrop of the moonlit sky. Eerie shadows dance across its surface, twisting and contorting in the shifting light. The surrounding forest seems to close in, suffocating the structure with its oppressive darkness, as if eager to swallow it whole. Behind the mill lies a forgotten graveyard, its tombstones crumbling and overgrown with weeds. Wisps of mist cling to the ground, swirling around the dilapidated graves like restless spirits seeking release. The air is heavy with the scent of decay, a grim reminder of the inevitability of death in the passage of time. A rickety bridge spans a chasm behind the mill, its wooden planks warped and rotted with age. The rushing waters below churn angrily, their frothy white caps illuminated by the pale light of the moon above. The sound of rushing water fills the night air, a constant reminder of the relentless passage of time and the inevitability of change. As dawn breaks, the first rays of sunlight pierce through the darkness, casting a warm glow upon the mill and the surrounding landscape. The forest awakens with the sounds of birdsong, filling the air with a symphony of life and renewal. Despite its dark past, a sense of peace settles over the mill, as if nature itself has forgiven its sins and granted it a second chance at redemption.
It was a dreary afternoon when Sarah, Tom, and their teenage daughter Lily arrived at Eldridge Manor. The old, sprawling mansion stood ominously against the darkening sky, its windows like blank eyes staring back at them. The family had inherited the property from a distant relative, and despite its eerie appearance, they decided to give it a chance. "Wow, this place is huge!" Lily exclaimed, though her excitement was tempered by an uneasy feeling. Tom forced a smile. "Let's make it our home. It just needs a little work." Sarah glanced at the towering structure, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Let's get inside before it gets too dark." Inside, the manor was filled with antique furniture, dusty chandeliers, and creaking wooden floors. As they explored, they discovered a hidden staircase behind an old bookcase. Curiosity got the better of them, and they descended into a dimly lit basement. "This place is like a maze," Tom said, his voice echoing off the walls. Sarah found an old diary on a dusty table. "Look at this," she said, flipping through the pages. "It's from the 1800s. Lily, shining a flashlight around the room, gasped as she saw strange symbols carved into the walls. "What do these mean?" That night, as they settled into their new home, strange things began to happen. Lily's room was the coldest in the house, and she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Around midnight, she heard whispering voices and saw a shadow moving in the corner of her room. "Mom! Dad!" she screamed, running to their room. Tom and Sarah woke up startled. "What is it, Lily?" Tom asked. "There's something in my room. I heard voices and saw a shadow," Lily said, trembling. Sarah tried to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, honey. This place is old and creepy, but there's nothing to be afraid of." The next day, Sarah delved deeper into the old diary. It belonged to a woman named Eleanor Eldridge, who wrote about the strange occurrences in the manor and her experiments with the occult. She mentioned a mirror in the attic that was the source of the hauntings. "We need to find that mirror," Sarah said, showing the diary to Tom. Tom nodded. "Let's go to the attic." Together, they climbed the narrow staircase to the attic. Amidst the cobwebs and old trunks, they found the mirror, covered with a dusty cloth. "This must be it," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. As they uncovered the mirror, a cold breeze swept through the attic. The mirror's surface was strangely clear, and as they looked into it, they saw faint images of people moving behind them, ghostly figures trapped within the glass. Sarah gasped. "This is it. This is what's causing everything." Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. "We need to destroy it." But before they could act, the mirror began to glow, and the room filled with an unearthly light. The figures in the mirror became more distinct, reaching out towards them. "We need to get out of here," Tom shouted, pulling Sarah towards the stairs. That night, the hauntings intensified. Doors slammed shut on their own, footsteps echoed in empty hallways, and ghostly apparitions appeared throughout the house. The family realized they had to find a way to end the hauntings for good. "We need to perform a ritual," Sarah said, showing them a passage from the diary. "It's the only way to banish the spirits." Tom gathered the necessary items: candles, salt, and a ceremonial dagger. "Let's do this. We have no other choice." They set up the ritual in the basement, forming a circle with the salt and placing the mirror in the center. The family began the ritual, chanting the incantations from the diary. As they did, the temperature in the room dropped, and the ghostly figures from the mirror began to emerge, swirling around them. "Keep going," Sarah urged, her voice shaking. Tom held the dagger steady, ready for the final part of the ritual. "We're almost there." Lily, clutching her mother's hand, watched in terror as the spirits drew closer, their faces contorted with rage and sorrow. As Tom raised the dagger to complete the ritual, a powerful force knocked him to the ground. The mirror glowed brighter, and a deafening roar filled the room. "No, we can't stop now!" Sarah shouted, helping Tom up. With renewed determination, Tom plunged the dagger into the mirror. The glass shattered, releasing a blinding light and a wave of cold air that knocked them all back. The spirits screamed and dissipated, leaving the room in silence. The temperature began to rise, and the oppressive feeling lifted. "It's over," Tom said, breathing heavily. The next morning, the manor felt different. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the oppressive atmosphere was gone. The family began packing their things, eager to leave the haunted house behind. "We did it," Lily said, smiling for the first time in days. Sarah nodded. "Let's never speak of this place again." Tom agreed. "We need to move on with our lives." As they drove away from Eldridge Manor, the weight of the past days lifted, and they felt hopeful for the future. Back home, life seemed to return to normal. However, one night, Sarah found a piece of the shattered mirror in her bag. She stared at it, her heart pounding. Suddenly, she heard a familiar whisper and saw a shadow move across the room. "Tom, it's not over," she whispered, feeling a chill run down her spine. As the shadow loomed larger, the whisper grew louder, and Sarah realized with horror that the spirits had followed them home. On a dark, windy night, 4 friends, Tom, Alice, Sam, and Lucy, stood at the entrance of an old abandoned mansion on Hollow Hill. They were dared to spend the night inside the house, which was rumored to be haunted. They pushed open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the house was dark and filled with dust. Old furniture was covered in white sheets, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. They entered the living room, where an old dusty couch sat under a large broken window. A grand piano stood in the corner, its keys covered in dust. Suddenly, the piano played a single eerie note, making them jump. They decided to explore upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked with each step. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver as they heard a faint whispering sound. They opened one of the doors and found a room with old children's toys scattered on the floor. The air was freezing, and the rocking chair in the corner started to move on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing around them. Panicked, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was colder and darker, with a damp smell. They found strange symbols on the walls. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She looked at them with hollow eyes and whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Hollow Hill. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed to never speak of it again.
It was a stormy night, the kind that forces even the bravest souls to stay indoors. Sarah sat alone in her dimly lit living room, the howling wind rattling the windows. She glanced at the clock, 11:45 p.m. Just 15 more minutes until midnight. She tried to focus on the book in her lap, but a sense of unease crept over her, making it impossible to concentrate. Suddenly, there was a loud knock at the door. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Who could it be at this hour, in such weather? She hesitated, then slowly walked to the door, her footsteps echoing in the silence of the house. Peeking through the peephole, she saw nothing but darkness. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling slightly. No response. She turned away, thinking it must have been the wind playing tricks on her, when the knock came again, louder this time. Determined to face her fears, she unlocked the door and opened it a crack. A blast of cold air hit her, and there on the doorstep stood a small child, drenched and shivering. The child's face was hidden beneath a dark, hooded raincoat. "Can I come in?" the child asked, voice barely audible over the storm. Sarah hesitated. Something about the child felt off, but she couldn't leave them out in the cold. "Of course," she said, stepping aside to let the child in. "What's your name?" The child didn't answer. Instead, they silently moved past her and stood in the center of the living room, water pooling around their feet. Sarah closed the door and turned to face the child, noticing that despite the soaking clothes, the child's face was eerily dry. "Where are your parents?" Sarah asked. But the child remained silent. She moved closer, intending to help remove the wet raincoat, but the child stepped back, finally lifting their head. Sarah gasped. The face beneath the hood was not that of a child, but of something far older with hollow, sunken eyes and a twisted grin. "They couldn't make it," the entity whispered, voice dripping with malice. Fear paralyzed Sarah as the creature took a step forward. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The lights flickered and the room grew colder. Suddenly, the clock struck midnight, and with each chime, the creature grew larger and more menacing. Sarah stumbled backward, her mind racing for an escape. As the final chime echoed through the house, the creature lunged at her, its bony fingers outstretched. In a final act of desperation, Sarah grabbed the nearest object, a heavy candlestick, and swung it with all her might. The creature let out an unearthly screech and vanished into thin air, leaving Sarah alone in the dark, trembling and gasping for breath. The storm outside began to subside, and a strange calm settled over the house. Sarah looked around, her heart still pounding, but the creature was gone. She locked the door, bolted the windows, and spent the rest of the night huddled on the couch, the candlestick clutched tightly in her hands. As dawn broke, Sarah finally allowed herself to relax. She had survived the night, but she knew deep down that the creature was still out there, waiting for another stormy night. In a small town shrouded in mist, there stood an ancient mansion, long abandoned and rumored to be haunted. Its dark silhouette cast a foreboding presence over the surrounding landscape, sending shivers down the spines of all who beheld it. Emily and Alex, two adventurous souls seeking thrills, stood before the rusted gates of the mansion. Despite warnings from locals, they were drawn to its mystery like moths to a flame. "Let's explore," Alex said, his voice tinged with excitement. As they crossed the threshold, the air grew heavy with the weight of centuries past. Cobwebs clung to the walls like spectral shrouds, and the faint echo of footsteps seemed to follow them into the darkness. Emily's heart raced as she whispered, "What have we gotten ourselves into?" Exploring deeper into the mansion's depths, Emily and Alex stumbled upon forgotten rooms filled with relics of a bygone era. Dust-covered portraits stared down at them with hollow eyes, and strange symbols adorned the walls. Each discovery sent a chill down their spines, but they pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. As they ventured further into the mansion, they encountered a presence unlike anything they had ever known. A spectral figure materialized before them, its ethereal form swathed in darkness. With a voice like ice, it whispered, "You dare to disturb my slumber?" With terror gripping their hearts, Emily and Alex fled through the twisting corridors of the mansion, pursued by unseen forces. Shadows seemed to reach out and grasp at them, and the air grew thick with the stench of decay. "We have to get out of here," Emily cried, her voice echoing in the darkness. At last they reached the heart of the mansion, where the source of its malevolence awaited. A swirling vortex of darkness engulfed them, threatening to consume their very souls. With trembling hands, Emily and Alex prepared to face the horrors that lurked within. In a final act of bravery, Emily and Alex confronted the darkness head-on. With artifacts in hand, they battled against the malevolent force that sought to claim them. With a burst of light, the curse that had plagued the mansion for centuries was finally broken. Emerging from the mansion's depths, Emily and Alex breathed a sigh of relief as sunlight broke through the clouds above. Though their adventure had been fraught with danger, they emerged stronger, their bond forged in the crucible of the haunted mansion. As they walked away from the mansion, Emily and Alex knew that they had faced their fears and triumphed over the darkness that had threatened to consume them. Though the mansion would forever remain a place of mystery and terror, they would always carry with them the lessons they had learned on that fateful night.
In a small town nestled among dense forests stood an old manor, its windows boarded up and its once grand facade now crumbling. The townsfolk whispered tales of the mansion being haunted, with eerie lights seen flickering in the windows at night. A group of adventurous teenagers, led by Alex, decided to spend the night in the abandoned manor, hoping to debunk the supernatural rumors surrounding it. They arrived just as dusk settled, their excitement tinged with nervousness. As they ventured inside, the air grew colder and the silence thicker. The floorboards creaked beneath their feet as they explored the dimly lit rooms, each filled with dusty furniture covered in white sheets. Strange occurrences began to unfold. Doors slammed shut on their own, whispers echoed through the halls, and ghostly apparitions appeared fleetingly in the corners of their eyes. Alex remained determined to find a rational explanation, but doubt crept into their minds. As midnight approached, the supernatural presence in the manor grew stronger. The teenagers found themselves surrounded by swirling mists and ominous whispers, trapped in a nightmarish labyrinth where reality blurred with the paranormal. With their courage waning, the teenagers made a desperate attempt to escape the malevolent forces that held them captive. Racing through the maze-like corridors, they stumbled upon a hidden passage leading to freedom. As dawn broke, the teenagers emerged from the manor, shaken but alive. They vowed never to return to the cursed place, their encounter with the supernatural etched into their memories forever. In a remote forest clearing stands an old, dilapidated cabin, its windows boarded up and its door barely hanging on its hinges. 4 friends, Tom, Sarah, Mike, and Emily, arrive at the cabin for a weekend getaway. The sun is setting, casting long shadows over the eerie landscape. Inside the cabin, the air is thick with dust and decay. Cobwebs hang from the rafters, and the floorboards creak ominously underfoot. The friends explore cautiously, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they navigate the dimly lit rooms. As they search the cabin, they discover a trapdoor leading to a dark, musty basement. With trepidation, they descend into the depths below, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The air grows colder, and the sound of dripping water echoes off the stone walls. In the basement, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to echo off the stone walls. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus. The friends exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding as they try to locate the source of the haunting sounds. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them. Translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. The ethereal beings glide through the darkness, their movements graceful yet unsettling. The friends watch in horror as the spirits draw closer, their presence filling the basement with a chilling aura. With adrenaline driving them, the friends turn and flee from the basement, their hearts pounding with terror. They scramble up the stairs, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they race for the safety of the cabin above. Behind them, the ghostly spirits follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends burst through the door of the cabin, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the floor, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. Outside, the moon casts an eerie glow over the forest, as if mourning the events that have unfolded.
Maya received an old handwritten letter inviting her to Ravenwood Manor, a house she had never heard of. The letter was signed by her late grandmother, whom she had never met. Intrigued and seeking answers about her family's past, she decided to visit the manor. As she arrived, the sky was overcast, and the manor stood tall and imposing against the gloomy backdrop. Maya pushed open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly in protest. The air inside was stale, and the grand entrance hall was shrouded in shadows. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung from the corners. As she stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind her, making her jump. Maya found her way to the dining room, where a long table was set as if for a grand feast. though everything was covered in dust. Tall candles stood unlit, and an old chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, she heard a faint whispering, and the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. In the hallway, Maya stopped in front of a large portrait of a stern-looking woman. The plaque read, Eliza Ravenwood, 1887. The woman's eyes seemed to follow Maya as she moved. She felt a sudden chill and a sense of being watched. A cold breeze brushed past her, causing her to shiver. Exploring further, Maya discovered a hidden passage behind a bookshelf in the library. She pushed the shelf aside and found a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Taking a deep breath, she descended the stairs, her flashlight flickering. The air grew colder with each step. The basement was cold and damp, with strange symbols painted on the walls. An altar stood in the center, surrounded by melted candles and old, tattered books. As Maya approached the altar, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The symbols seemed to glow faintly, and she heard distant, echoing whispers. Maya's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand brush against her arm. Panic set in as she fumbled for her flashlight. When it flickered back on, she saw the ghostly figure of Eliza Ravenwood standing before her, eyes filled with malice. Maya stumbled back, tripping over a loose floorboard and landing hard. The diary she had found earlier slipped from her grasp, landing open on the floor. The pages detailed Eliza Ravenwood's descent into madness and dark rituals meant to bind her spirit to the house. Maya realized that Eliza's spirit was trying to protect a dark secret hidden within the manor. Determined to escape, Maya grabbed the diary and ran up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and shadows darting around her. She burst through the front door into the stormy night, her heart pounding. As she reached her car, she looked back at the manor and saw Eliza's ghostly figure watching her from an upstairs window. In the heart of a dense forest stood an old, forgotten asylum. It had been abandoned for decades, its history buried under layers of dust and overgrown vines. The locals believed it was cursed, and no one dared to go near it. However, a group of 4 friends, Jake, Lisa, Ben, and Sarah, decided to explore it after hearing the eerie tales. "Are we really doing this, Indato Selwyn?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Of course," Jake replied, leading the way. "It's just an old building." As they approached the asylum, the air grew colder, and an unsettling silence surrounded them. Inside, the asylum was even more ominous. The walls were lined with peeling paint, and the floor was covered in debris. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. "This place gives me the creeps," Ben said, his flashlight illuminating the dark corridors. "Just stick together," Jake said, trying to sound brave. "We'll be fine." As they moved deeper into the asylum, they heard faint whispers and distant footsteps, though they were the only ones there. Or so they thought. While exploring a particularly dark hallway, Lisa suddenly screamed. "Did you see that?" She pointed towards a shadowy figure that disappeared around the corner. "What did you see?" Jake asked, rushing to her side. "A person, or something that looked like one," Lisa replied, shaking. "Let's check it out," Ben suggested, though his voice was shaky. They cautiously followed, but the figure was gone. Instead, they found an old, rusted wheelchair with fresh scratch marks on the floor. In one of the rooms, they found old patient records and disturbing photos. The files detailed horrific experiments conducted on the patients. "This is sick," Sarah said, flipping through the documents. "No wonder this place is abandoned." Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them. The friends rushed to open it, but it was stuck. The room grew colder, and they heard a low, guttural growl. "We need to get out of here," Jake said, panic setting in. They managed to pry the door open and fled down the corridor. The whispers grew louder, and they could feel a presence following them. Sarah looked back and saw shadowy figures closing in. "Run!" she screamed. They raced through the maze-like hallways, trying to find an exit. The spirits of the asylum's past residents seemed to be everywhere, their wails echoing through the walls. "We're not alone," Ben panted, fear evident in his voice. The group stumbled upon a chapel within the asylum, its stained glass windows cracked but still intact. The room had an eerie calmness, and the spirits seemed to avoid it. Maybe we can hide here, Lisa suggested, her voice trembling. They barricaded the doors and huddled together, trying to catch their breath. As they sat in the dim light of their flashlights, they noticed a hidden door behind the altar. Should we check it out? Jake asked. We don't have a choice, Ben replied. They opened the hidden door and found a narrow staircase leading down to a secret basement. The air grew colder as they descended. The basement was filled with old medical equipment and cages. This must be where they conducted their experiments, Sarah whispered. As they explored, they found a large iron-bound book, filled with incantations and rituals. The book seemed to pulse with a dark energy. We need to destroy this, Jake said. It might be the source of the curse. With the book in hand, they returned to the chapel. They decided to perform a ritual to break the curse. As they began chanting from the book, the spirits became more aggressive, banging on the doors and windows. Keep going, Alex shouted. The room shook, and the spirits' wails grew louder. Just as it seemed the spirits would break through, a blinding light filled the chapel, and the spirits screamed one final time before vanishing. It's over, Emily whispered, dropping the book. The spirits gone, the friends made their way out of the asylum. The building seemed less menacing now, the air lighter. We made it, Lisa said, relief evident in her voice. As they reached the forest edge, they turned back to see the asylum one last time. It stood silently, as if the horrors within had finally been laid to rest. We should go, Ben said, and never speak of this place again. Back in town, life slowly returned to normal. The friends promised each other to never speak of the asylum again. However, the memories of that night lingered. A few weeks later, Sarah received a package. Inside was another iron-bound book, similar to the one they had destroyed. Attached was a note, for your collection. Her heart raced as she realized the curse might not be broken after all. The sun was setting as Emily, a young journalist, arrived at Ravenswood Manor. She had heard rumors of the haunted mansion and wanted to investigate for her next big story. The old, decaying building stood at the edge of the town, surrounded by overgrown trees. As she approached the iron gates, a sense of dread washed over her. Emily pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and cold. Dust covered the floor and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but neglected interior. Her footsteps echoed ominously as she walked down the main hallway. In the dim light, Emily noticed portraits lining the walls. The eyes in the paintings seemed to follow her every move, making her uneasy. Suddenly, she heard a faint whisper, like someone calling her name. She turned around quickly, but there was no one there. Her heart began to race. Emily entered the music room, where an old piano stood covered in dust. As she approached, she heard a soft, haunting melody. The keys were moving on their own, playing a melancholic tune. The room grew colder, and Emily felt an unseen presence watching her. In the library, Emily found a hidden door behind a bookcase. Inside, she discovered a small room filled with strange artifacts and an old leather-bound journal. She opened the journal and read about dark rituals and a curse placed on the mansion. The final entry warned of a vengeful spirit trapped within the house. As Emily read the journal, the temperature dropped sharply. She heard footsteps approaching and saw a shadowy figure materialize in the doorway. The figure was a ghostly woman with a twisted expression of rage. She pointed at Emily, her voice echoing with anger. "You must leave this place!" Emily's survival instincts kicked in, and she bolted from the hidden room. She raced through the dark hallways, the spirit's angry screams echoing behind her. She reached the front door and flung it open, escaping into the night. Gasping for breath, she looked back to see the mansion standing silent and still, but she knew she had been lucky to escape with her life. Safe at home, Emily reviewed her notes and the footage she had captured. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the mansion's dark history and the vengeful spirit. As she finished, she felt a cold breeze and heard a whisper, "Thank you." She knew the spirits had found some peace. James, a middle-aged man who recently lost his job, receives an unexpected letter. It's an invitation to visit Willow Creek, a small town where his late grandmother owned an old, decrepit house. Intrigued and in need of a change, he decides to visit the house with his wife, Sarah, and their teenage daughter, Emma. Why have we never heard of this place before? Sarah asks, reading the letter again. James shrugs. I guess it was forgotten, just like Grandma. Emma, excited by the idea of an adventure, chimes in. I can't wait to see what it's like. The family arrives at Willow Creek after a long drive. The town is eerily quiet, with old, abandoned buildings lining the streets. They finally reach the house, which stands at the end of a narrow, overgrown road. The house is large, Gothic, and appears to have been untouched for decades. This place is giving me the creeps, Sarah whispers, holding Emma's hand. James tries to reassure them. It's just old. Let's see what's inside. Inside, the house is dark and filled with dust. The furniture is covered in white sheets, and cobwebs hang from the ceiling. As they explore, Emma finds an old diary in one of the bedrooms. Look at this, Mom, Emma says, flipping through the pages. Sarah reads aloud. June 12th, 1923. Strange noises keep me awake at night. I fear the spirits are restless. James frowns. Spirits? That night, the family tries to sleep, but strange noises echo through the house. Doors creak and distant whispers can be heard. Emma wakes up in the middle of the night, feeling a cold breeze. She sees a shadowy figure at the foot of her bed. Dad, is that you? She whispers, but the figure vanishes. Emma runs to her parents' room, terrified. Mom, Dad, there's someone in my room. The next day, the family visits the local library to learn more about the house. They discover that it was built by a wealthy family in the 1800s. But tragedy struck when the entire family mysteriously disappeared. This place has a dark history, Sarah says, reading an old newspaper article. James nods. We need to find out what happened. Emma adds, maybe the diary has more clues. Back at the house, James finds a hidden door in the basement. Inside, they discover a room filled with old photographs, letters, and strange symbols drawn on the walls. There's also a large locked chest. These symbols look like some kind of ritual, Sarah says, tracing them with her finger. James tries to open the chest. We need to find the key. Emma points to a photograph. Look, that's the family that lived here. That night, the hauntings become more intense. Objects move on their own, and ghostly apparitions appear. Emma is dragged out of bed by an unseen force, and Sarah sees a figure standing at the end of the hallway watching them. We need to leave now, Sarah screams, but the doors are locked and won't open. James grabs the diary and starts reading the last entry. We must complete the ritual to appease the spirits. Desperate, the family gathers in the basement to perform the ritual described in the diary. They light candles and arrange the symbols in a circle. James reads the incantation aloud, while Sarah and Emma hold hands, trembling. As the ritual progresses, the house shakes and the spirits grow more agitated. A blinding light fills the room, and the spirits are drawn into the circle, screaming. Keep going, James, Sarah yells over the noise. With a final shout, James completes the incantation and the spirits vanish. The house falls silent. The next morning, the house feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone and sunlight streams through the windows. The family packs up their belongings, relieved that the ordeal is over. We should tell the authorities about this place, Sarah says, looking back at the house. James nods. Let's make sure no one else has to go through this. They drive away, leaving Willow Creek behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Emma finds the old diary on her bedside table, even though she left it in the house. Her heart races as she opens it, and a cold breeze fills the room. A whispering voice fills the air. You cannot escape the past. Emma turns to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness.
On a dark, stormy night, 5 friends, Alice, Ben, Clara, David, and Eva, walk down a desolate street. They come across an old, dilapidated house at the end of the road. The house is known among locals as the last house on the street and is rumored to be haunted. Despite their fear, curiosity gets the better of them, and they decide to explore the house. The door creaks loudly as they push it open, revealing a dusty, abandoned interior. They enter the living room, which is filled with old furniture and a large, cracked mirror on the wall. Suddenly, the door slams shut behind them, and they hear faint whispering. The whispering leads them to a hidden door behind the stairs, which opens to a dark basement. Hesitant but determined, they descend the creaky steps, the air growing colder with each step. In the basement, they find an old chest. When they open it, they discover ancient cursed artifacts and a diary. The diary tells the story of a family that disappeared mysteriously, and it warns of a malevolent spirit trapped in the house. As they read the diary, the temperature drops, and a chilling presence fills the room. Shadows begin to move on their own, and the friends see a ghostly figure emerging from the darkness. Realizing they need to escape, they run back up the stairs. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and windows shattering. They finally break free and run out into the stormy night, vowing never to return. Back in the safety of their homes, they sit together, shaken but relieved. They know they will never forget the night they encountered the haunted house at the end of the street.
In the heart of the small town of Ravenswood, a young historian named Emily discovered an ancient, dusty manuscript in the basement of the local library. The manuscript, bound in dark leather, was covered in strange symbols and appeared to be centuries old. Emily's curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to take it home for further study. As she left the library, the old librarian, Mr. Finch, watched her with a worried expression. "Be careful with that book," he warned. "It's said to be cursed." Emily shrugged off his concerns. "It's just an old book. What harm could it do?" At home, Emily began to translate the manuscript. It told the story of a powerful sorcerer who had cursed the book to trap the souls of those who read it. As she read, strange things started happening. The room grew colder, and shadows seemed to move on their own. Emily's cat, Luna, hissed and arched her back, staring at an invisible presence. Ignoring the signs, Emily continued to read, her fascination growing. "I have to know more," she muttered to herself, her eyes glued to the ancient text. Late that night, Emily was awakened by a cold breeze and the feeling of being watched. She looked around her dark bedroom and saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. It had hollow eyes and a twisted smile. "Who are you?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond but began to move closer, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. Emily scrambled out of bed and turned on the light, but the figure vanished. Panting, she realized the curse was real. She needed help. The next day, Emily visited her friend Alex, who was an expert in the occult. She told him everything about the manuscript and the shadowy figure. "This is serious," Alex said, flipping through the manuscript. "You need to destroy this book before it's too late." Emily hesitated. "But it's an incredible find. There must be another way." Alex shook his head. "The longer you keep it, the stronger the curse will become. You don't understand the danger you're in." Emily reluctantly agreed. They decided to perform a ritual that night to break the curse. As night fell, Emily and Alex gathered the necessary items for the ritual: candles, salt, and an ancient incantation. They returned to Emily's house and set up in her study, drawing a protective circle on the floor. "Are you sure this will work?" Emily asked, placing the candles around the circle. "It has to," Alex replied, lighting the candles. "We don't have any other choice." Emily's hands trembled as she held the manuscript. "Let's do this." As they began the ritual, the temperature in the room plummeted. The shadowy figure reappeared, more menacing than before. It howled and thrashed against the barrier of the protective circle. "Keep chanting!" Alex yelled over the noise. Emily's voice wavered as she recited the incantation, but she kept going. The figure's form started to waver, and it let out a piercing scream. With one final burst of energy, it shattered into 1,000 pieces of darkness, vanishing completely. Panting, Emily and Alex looked at each other. "Is it over?" Emily asked. "I think so," Alex replied, his voice shaking. The room was eerily quiet after the spirit vanished. Emily knew what she had to do next. She took the manuscript and, with a heavy heart, threw it into the fireplace. The flames roared to life, consuming the ancient book. As the manuscript burned, Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The curse was finally broken. "Thank you, Alex," she said, watching the flames. "We did it together," Alex replied. "Let's hope we never encounter anything like this again." In the days that followed, Emily's life returned to normal. The eerie occurrences stopped, and she was able to focus on her work again. She vowed to be more cautious with the ancient texts she studied. One evening, she and Alex met at a cafe to catch up. "How are you holding up?" Alex asked. "Better," Emily said with a smile. "I think I've had enough excitement for a lifetime." They laughed, but a part of Emily still wondered about the other secrets the world held. For now, though, she was content to leave them undiscovered. As Emily walked home from the cafe, she felt a chill in the air. She glanced around, suddenly uneasy. When she arrived at her apartment, she found a package waiting at her door. Curious, she opened it and gasped. Inside was another ancient manuscript, even older than the one she had destroyed. Attached was a note, "For your collection." Emily's heart raced. She looked around, but there was no one in sight. She knew this was far from over. Emily sat at her desk, staring at the new manuscript. She knew she should destroy it, but her curiosity was overwhelming. She reached out and opened the book, unable to resist. As she began to read, the room grew colder once again. Shadows crept along the walls, and a familiar sense of dread filled the air. The curse had returned, and this time, it was more powerful than ever. Emily was trapped in an endless cycle, forever bound to the cursed manuscripts. The haunting of Ravenswood was far from over.